Come read with me. We're on chapter 3, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. This is my autobiography. I'm Violet Calkins. Let's get to it. It's all relative. My mother, Della, was a big-boned, big-bodied, and big-hearted woman. She always smiled with her lips closed because for years her teeth were rotten and brown. In photographs, she always looked as if she was embarrassed about something. When I was about 10 or 11 years old, Mama went to a dentist and they pulled almost all of her teeth. She came home with her entire face all bruised. Later we heard that the dentist had a bad reputation and some called him the butcher. When Mama was young, she was quite attractive. She was named Sweater Girl in her senior class yearbook. Needless to say, she, at one time, had a nice figure. She had long, wavy auburn hair that she pulled back and pinned in place with 2 bobby pins on each side. She sectioned off the top portion of her hair and twisted the ends and pushed it slightly forward, forming a soft wave. Then curled the ends into a roll at the top of her head, which she also held in place with bobby pins. You've probably seen pictures of women from the 1940s with similar styles. During the Second World War, in the early 1940s, Mama had a hard time obtaining bobby pins for her hair. But God, in His infinite love, cares even about the little things that are important to us. The following examples testify to that. Shortly after my parents were married in 1942, a lot of ordinary items of daily life were no longer available because of the country's natural resources being diverted toward the war effort. Many ordinary items, especially those made of metal, could no longer be found in stores. Bobby pins were one of those items. They were unavailable anywhere. My father, Bert, was refinishing a wood floor in a house near their home. As he ran the sander, he spotted something glistening in the cracks between the hardwood boards. He investigated and found out what was sparkling in the cracks on the floor. He went home for lunch and told Della, "Come with me." She had no idea what he might want her to see. Della went back to the house Bert was working on. "Look," he said, as he pointed to the floor. There, to her surprise, was an abundance of otherwise unavailable bobby pins. God had provided for her need in a unique way. My mother was never in a hurry. While riding with her in the car, the children, especially the impatient teenagers who were always in a hurry, constantly badgered her to drive faster. It never worked. She was the most honest woman you will ever meet. She would never tell even the slightest untruth. Mama was extremely strict with us children. Although she disciplined us religiously, she showed little outward affection to us. We children grew up never being hugged or being told that we were loved. The little ones did not get held or to sit in her lap except when she was nursing or when she was feeding them a bottle. That chore often fell to the oldest child. Upon hearing of her own childhood, it might explain her reticence in her nurturing skills. But the children who desired to know that they were loved had no way to understand her lack of affection. My mother, Della Rose, was from a very large family herself. There were 16 children in all, not all from the same parents. Sometime early in 1902, Clifford Rose, my maternal grandfather, married Lily Maxwell. Lily and Clifford had 6 children. Lily, it was said, was a good housekeeper. She had been cleaning house, moving furniture as she worked. She suddenly had a severe pain in her side and went to the hospital. The doctor did exploratory surgery. The next day, she told her husband, Clifford, that she was feeling better and that the doctor was going to let her go home. Unexpectedly, that night, Lily died. My maternal grandfather, Clifford Rose, was left a widower with 6 children. Clifford and Lily's girls had lots of dresses. After their mother died, if their clothes got dirty, the girls would simply hide the dresses under the bed, and Clifford would buy them new ones. In the year 1919, at the age of 21, my grandmother, Bertie Best, married the widower Clifford Rose, who was a loving Christian man. He owned a 160-acre farm. Years later, Bertie had a dream about the farm that there was oil under the shale. If she had paid attention to that dream, how different our lives might have been. Bertie was a square, stout, austere-looking woman with a severe countenance. She was not very attractive even as a teen, but she was smart and kind and had come from a long line of educators. She also played the violin. Now, I'm going to insert something here that I didn't put in the book. They lived on that 160-acre farm, and it was in Oklahoma. And you know where all the oil comes from? Under the shale in Oklahoma. Could have been from their homestead. When Bertie married Clifford, she not only inherited the 6 children, but the excessive work that went along with it. Mama said that when Grandma married Clifford Rose, the new bride spent the first 2 weeks after her wedding day washing clothes. They had no washing machines then, so all the clothes had to be scrubbed by hand on a corrugated metal washboard in a tub of water with lye soap. The clothes had to be wrung out by hand and rinsed in another tub of clean water and wrung out again. Next, they were hung to dry and then ironed before they could be worn again. Bertie and Clifford were married for 11 years, and they had 7 children. 7 children. One child was born with spina bifida and lived only a short time. Grandma Bertie mourned the loss of that child for years. Though her life was hard, she was sensitive in spirit. Some of the children from the first family were nearly grown before Mama Della was born on April 5th, 1924. Thelma was one of the original children from Clifford and Lily Rose. When the first child of the new family of Clifford and Bertie was born, Thelma was told that she had a new half-sister. Thelma said, "If she can't be my whole sister, I don't want her at all." In 1930, Della, child number 5 of the 7, was 6 years old. Bertie was far along in her pregnancy with her 6th child. Clifford became ill with pneumonia. Because Clifford was so ill and noise bothered him, the children had been taken about 5 miles away to their Aunt Sarah's house. Bertie remained behind to care for Clifford as best she could. March 1st, 1930, 11 years after Bertie married him, Clifford Rose died of pneumonia, leaving her a widow with a house full of children. At the time, 6-year-old Della was also ill with pneumonia. Della had lain down across 2 kitchen chairs at her aunt's home and gone to sleep. Someone took her to bed and bundled her up to keep her warm. She awoke some time later and heard the older girls, Thelma and Virginia, crying in a corner of the room. Della asked them, "What is the matter?" But when the girls told her that her father had died, she could not comprehend what they were saying. She wandered in and out of consciousness. Each time she awoke, she asked them, "Why are you crying?" But she still could not understand their answers. Later, she and the other children were taken home by their mother. The newly widowed Bertie drove them by wagon 5 miles back to her home. There, the children were allowed to see their dad, who in death was laid out on the table in his best clothes. His eyes were shut. When Della saw him, he looked so natural, she said, "He isn't dead, he is only sleeping." Then she passed out. The following day, March 2nd, Mr. Rose was buried. When the funeral was over, all of the older children from the first family left. They told Bertie, "You do not need any extra mouths to feed." But Bertie had a house full of children under age 10 and a 160-acre farm to manage. Losing the older children put a huge hardship on her. With Clifford gone, she had no help. March 3rd, the day after the funeral, Bertie gave birth to her youngest daughter, Darlene. The reasons the older children had gone was that they knew their grandpa was coming, and they did not like him. They were determined they would not be there when he arrived. 2 years after Clifford passed away, in 1932, Bertie Rose met and fell in love with Willie Ray Dean. Willie had heard of the plight of the widow and had gone to the farm to lend a hand. They were married in November of that year. Della was only 8 years old. She missed the loving father that she had lost, but Willie, her new stepfather, was kind. He worked for the railroad, from which he later retired. Willie was slow of movement, so that some said he was lazy. He had arthritis, so he did not work the farm, but left much of the work to the children. Often it seemed that the work was too hard for the little children. 8-year-old Della once suffered a severe whipping because she was told to let loose Willie's large horse, which he had ridden, into the yard after work. Della grew up in Indian Territory of Colorado and Oklahoma. Her playground was the prairie, and she sometimes rode wild ponies. She had one pony which she called Blucher because he was sort of blue-gray in color. Della, not understanding the folly of her actions, had removed the bridle first. Then, before she could remove the saddle, the horse ran off, dragging his reins behind him. The reins somehow became entangled with her pony Blucher, and the colt was dragged across the pasture. The colt was injured and had to be shot. Della was punished sore. The loss of her pony was a devastating blow. The stepchildren were not allowed to touch, hug, or sit on Willie's lap, because their mother, Bertie, was afraid of what other people might think. Appearances seemed to be more important than the effects of the deprivation of physical affections might have had on the children. They grew up deprived of any parental nourishing. Willie and Bertie had 4 children, 2 girls and twin boys. The twins, Calvin and Alvin, were born premature and were very tiny. They were identical twins. Bertie had a hard time when it came to feeding them after they were born. They were unable to suck naturally and would not open their mouths to be fed. Bertie had to force their jaws apart to force the nipple into their tiny mouths. It bruised their delicate lips, but her persistence paid off, and the twins survived. Della, rather than adapting her parents' style, clung to many of the examples from her child. She applied them to raising her own children. She made her own children work hard. She withheld physical touch and words of loving affirmation, now known to be essential for proper emotional development. Her primary focus was on teaching her children the importance of unquestioned obedience. She punctuated her point by telling them of a time when she was a child herself and her obedience saved her life. Bertie was working in the vegetable garden and Della, a child, was playing nearby. Bertie looked in Della's direction and said, "Don't move." Her mother had seen with horror that Della was standing with her bare foot on the back of a rattlesnake. Her foot was directly behind its head. Della knew not to move and stayed put until her mother took her garden hoe and chopped off the head of the snake while Della's foot was still on it. Della was a good student and had wanted to attend college when she graduated from high school. But it was during the Depression and the financial hardships required her to leave home in her teens. She went to work as a maid for a family in Tulsa, Oklahoma. While living on the farm before her mother married Willie, they were so poor at times that she said, "We did not even have a nail to hang our clothes on." The winter after Clifford died, they lived on unsweetened, cold plums that were so sour they made their mouths pucker. The teacher at the local school must have been concerned about their lack of proper nutrition, because she gave Della's older sister an assignment to write down everything she had for breakfast the following morning. Bertie was not willing to let her need be known, made sure that the sister had a nutritious breakfast that morning. She gave her the only egg that they had, along with the sour plums and a biscuit. The ruse worked. No one discovered their severe poverty. Because she had once been poor herself, Mama was at least concerned about the poor. She would often feed hobos who came to the house or give her coins to beggars that she met while shopping. Self-sacrifice seemed to define her life. Della loved the piano even from the time she was a toddler. She was a self-taught pianist and for many of her adult years was the church pianist. She was often offended that if that duty was offered to another. She seemed to thrive on being able to play the piano, and she was religious in her responsibilities. She was never given payment for her many years of faithful service. She could have used even a small stipend, but she wouldn't ask for nothing for herself. Even if gifts were offered, she would decline them and defer to others. Her children were expected to behave in the same manner. Self-sacrifice was not really an option because pride was self-sacrifice was not really I'm sorry, I messed that up there. Was not really an option because pride was at stake. It was expected. If one of us children were visiting at the house of a friend and was offered some treat or even a meal, we were expected to turn it down. It was pride that brought about such staunch self-denial. There was to be no outward indication that there might be a need, and we had many, believe me. Being poor was bad enough, but to have to pretend that we were not seemed somewhat hypocritical to me. In contrast to my mother's mixed-up multiple-parent family, my father, Bert Oakley Howell, had only one set of parents. Bert was from a family of 11 children. He had 4 brothers and 5 sisters. His mother and one child died in childbirth when Bert was 6 years old. So he was raised primarily by his older sisters and his father. He was raised on a farm in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and they later moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado, where he eventually met my mother, Della. When she refused his proposal, he told her that if she didn't marry him, he would kill himself. Bert was skinny, red-headed, sharp-nosed, and freckled. He had freckles on his arms, head, hands, and neck. In other words, whatever skin was exposed to the light was highly freckled. And it's raining. Interesting. As I was growing up, there was a picture of my father's mother, my paternal grandmother, hanging in the home. It was her wedding portrait. She was a very beautiful woman. We children were told that she was French. Actually, she was my grandfather's niece, or Bert's first cousin. But the truth was hidden until many years later. So my second cousin was also my grandmother. Interesting. As a young child, Bert was involved in a mishap which burned his leg and caused a permanent deformity. One of his older brothers was pouring gasoline from a tin can onto an outdoor fire. As he poured the gasoline, the can ignited, and in fear, he tossed it away. It landed near Bert, splashing the flaming gas onto him. His right pant leg burst into flames, badly burning his leg. It must have been terribly painful. For 2 years, he was unable to walk on the burned leg, and the leg muscles drew up in the back so that his leg folded back at a right angle to his thigh. When he was 12, looking very much like a freckled Huckleberry Finn, his leg was surgically repaired at the Baylor Hospital in Texas. And there was a newspaper article about him. It was called, they made note of the fact that he looked like Huck Finn.